Thank you, Mr. Meinschein. 10 aye votes, sir. And the last two bills on the agenda are by committee members. Ms. Gonzalez is next up.
I'll give it my whole presentation. Thank you. I want to, a point of personal privilege as well. I'd like to introduce my shadow foster youth for the day, Carrington Pankey, who's in the audience as well.
Karen, where are you?
Carrington.
Oh, Carrington.
Yes.
Carrington? There's Carrington. Welcome. Welcome to the hearing.
He's from my community of City Heights. So
Thank you.
I'm excited to have him here.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Chair and members, today women and men are treated differently within the workers' compensation system. As an obvious and forthright example, my breasts are worth less than your testicles. Gender bias is not allowed in the workplace or hiring. Charging more for health insurance premiums based on gender is now against federal law, and gender is not allowed to be a factor under current worker compensation rules. It's time our workers' compensation rules in California reflect that value in practice. AB 305 eliminates gender bias against working women in California. AB 305 would go beyond the ratings guide used during medical examinations and update our code so that the disability rating for losing a breast, which is now 0% if you're beyond childbearing age, and only 5% if you are of childbearing age, can be rated the same as prostate cancer. This legislation also identifies specific conditions found either predominantly or only among women and addresses the inequity in the disability ratings guide. AB 305 disallows pregnancy, menopause, or osteoporosis from being considered during apportionment when those conditions are contemporaneous with the work injury. It also prevents apportionment for psychiatric disability or impairment caused by sexual harassment. California has been a leader on workforce equity issues. AB 305 is part of the overall fight for equity in the workplace, including equal pay for equal work, which is part of the 2015 Stronger California legislative agenda. California's strength, size, and national significance make it a critical place to move the needle on workplace policies for women. Being a woman should not be a pre-existing condition. As you'll hear from our witnesses today, there's documented evidence of gender bias in apportionment and disability ratings aspect to workers' compensation. I have a couple of folks to testify with me today.
Please go ahead.
Crystal Schoenfelder with the California Applicants Attorneys Association. Chairman Daley and Assembly members, thank you for allowing me to testify in support of AB 305 today. I am proud to be a woman, and I am proud to advocate on behalf of women injured on the job, California's wives, mothers, grandmothers, daughters, aunts, and nieces. We happen to have been born with 2 X chromosomes and breasts. These should never, ever be reasons to provide lower benefits to women who have suffered work injuries. Reducing a woman's permanent disability compensation for carpal tunnel syndrome by 40% due to, quote, non-industrial predisposing conditions such as female gender and postmenopausal status, unquote, is unacceptable and outright discriminatory. Yet an injured worker who was a female mechanical engineer performing heavy computer entry duties for 30 years had her permanent disability reduced because of menopause. Menopause is a natural part of a woman's aging status. It is patently unfair to give a man full compensation benefits because he will never experience menopause, yet cut a woman's benefits simply because she is female and happens to go through menopause. Awarding 0% permanent disability compensation to a 31-year-old woman who for 9 years performed heavy computer use duties and experienced numbness in her right hand as well as right thumb fingering is also unacceptable. In her case, electrodiagnostic studies confirmed bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome. She then became pregnant and subsequently experienced left hand numbness and left thumb triggering. After her child was born, she still experienced both the bilateral hand numbness and the bilateral thumb triggering. Yet the opinion was that, quote, Her bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome has been significantly influenced by her pregnancy and breastfeeding, and only possibly her work activity, end quote. This is even though the right-sided symptoms began before pregnancy and the symptoms bilaterally continued after her pregnancy. Yet her condition was blamed on her pregnancy. Again, this is unacceptable gender discrimination. Apportionment allows reduction of permanent disability benefits for conditions that caused or contributed to the work injury. But allowing apportionment to menopause or pregnancy ensures that a female injured worker will always be treated differently from a male worker who physically, anatomically, and biologically cannot go through a pregnancy or menopause. This gender-based policy is inappropriate and is the reason AB 305 is necessary in the workers' compensation system. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Other speakers in support of the bill?
Good morning. My name is Janice Page, and I have been a deputy for approximately 14 years. I love my job, and I'm proud to serve and to protect the public. I worked 5 years on patrol and many years in corrections, and now I work in the training unit. As a first responder, my job has also involved responding to vehicle accidents, sometimes with vehicles on fire. Other emergency response have involved gasoline fires, building fires, and always fumes. I remember responding to a home one night where we discovered there was a gas leak. In February 2012, I found I had breast cancer. I've had a total of 5 surgeries, developed infections, and have had a breast removed. The cancer was found to be work-related. I have returned to my job, but life is not the same. The loss of my breast has been devastating. Although I have an implant, it's mainly so that my clothes look normal. There is nothing normal about living without your breast. There is no feeling, and my body is missing an important organ. In addition to physical changes, it has been difficult emotionally. It has made me feel different about myself. When I started, I had 2 normal breasts. I now have 1 normal and 1 that is deformed. My right breast is higher and smaller than my left. It has been left scarred and distorted in shape. I'm embarrassed at my appearance and upset by having a part of my body removed. I have filed a claim for workers' compensation insurance to provide medical care and compensation for my permanent disabilities. The law requires insurance companies to compensate me for permanent disabilities resulting from my injury. Although nothing can make up for the loss of my body part, there should be compensation for resulting impact on my life. But I have been given a permanent impairment rating of 0% by workers' compensation doctor who told me at the very beginning he had never handled a case like mine. This rating, the insurer would pay no permanent disability compensation for the loss of my breast. If a male officer lost one of his organs, say his prostate, to cancer, the rating would be close to 16%. Does that seem fair? I should not be discriminated against and have my disability compensation reduced because of a bias against women. I carry the same weight on my duty belt as my male counterpart, confront the same dangers, work just as hard, and it's not fair for me and my fellow female officers to be penalized because of our gender. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members, Barry Broad on behalf of the Teamsters Union. We're co-sponsors with the bill. I think very simply stated, this bill rectifies what is essentially a historical bias against women in the law. When the workers' comp system started, it was workmen's compensation, and to the extent that women are separate from men, it was simply discounted and devalued. So, you know, if you share the same body part as a man, then you're compensated the same way. If it's something that's unique to women, it's discounted basically almost completely. And so this just needs to change. We urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other speakers in support of the bill? They're lined up. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Chair, members, Deanna Johnston on behalf of the California Nurses Association. We too are in strong support of this measure. As a predominantly female workforce, we hear of similar stories as the woman who testified, and we urge your aye vote on this measure.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Pat Whalen, Ellison Wilson Advocacy here on behalf of the United Nurses Association of California. We got our letter in late. I think too late to be on the late support, but we do urge your support for this bill.
Addie Myers on behalf of the American Association of University Women California in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Megan Brightwell on behalf of the California Professional Firefighters. Our letter also was a little too late to make the analysis, but we're in full support. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members. Ryan Sherman on behalf of the Los Angeles County Professional Peace Officers Association, the Long Beach Police Officers Association, Santa Ana Police Officers Association, Sacramento County Deputy Sheriffs, and the California Fraternal Order of Police, all in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers in support of the bill? If not, we'll go to any speakers in opposition to the bill. And you can just use that mic. If I would prefer that you use that mic, please. It's more expeditious. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Faith Conley with the California State Association of Counties. We strongly oppose this bill. I want to start out by just saying that apportionment is simply the process by which we can assign liability for the injuries that happen. It protects employers from having to cover injuries that don't happen at work and are not the result of injuries that have actually not happened at work. We would also strongly disagree that labor code does not prohibit gender bias when apportioning out these injuries. In fact, current labor code provides stringent guidelines on how doctors can apportion these injuries. The doctor must clearly explain how and why he or she arrived at their conclusion and that it wasn't speculative. It must be based on causation, and it must be approved by a judge every time. Understandably, this makes it difficult for proponents and opponents to find any evidence that women are routinely actually receiving lower permanent disability ratings due to their gender. I would also comment that the Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld that apportionment is legal in these cases, and any evidence that's lacking to support that adjustment can be remanded. This is more of an enforcement issue. It's not an issue with the labor code. AB 305 is only going to increase litigation, and for counties, I cannot possibly help you understand how costly this would be for us. It basically means that we're going to have to take money out of the services we provide for our residents and spend it on litigation when these cases that are reasonably apportioned are reopened because this bill passes. Counties already experience some of the highest claims costs when it comes to the workers' compensation system in California. I would urge your no vote. Please don't put more costs on us to cover this system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, Julianne Broyles here on behalf of the California Association of Joint Powers Authorities, also in opposition. We do have very strong thoughts on this bill and what it would unnecessarily do, which is to open the way to discriminatory new claims that we would have to wipe out, in effect, what we currently have of the many legitimate medical factors to which apportionment to causation is based. When we enacted SB 899, we intended to, and there was a very strict intent to limit the employer's liability for permanent disability to just what was caused by work. It's not fair, in our view, to require employers to also cover the cost of permanent impairment caused by pre-existing non-industrial medical conditions. We must rely on the judgment of physicians when it comes to the factors used in the determination of apportionment. In fact, as we've looked into these cases in our own files, we have found and looked at the cases that have been cited by the proponents of the bill. Many times, the cause of the unfair apportionment came from a badly written medical report that then was corrected and the benefits were correctly applied. We do think that this would further erode the protections that we have currently in Labor Code 4663 and Labor Code 4664 with regard to apportionment. It would effectively write out I think it's already been stated by the prior testifier, apportionment is and it should remain a medical decision based on the individual case, which is as it should be and as the legislature further intended it when we passed SB 863 just a few years ago. The legislature has never intentionally transferred liability in this way for a clearly non-industrial injury. It would be setting a very bad precedent, and of course, to our risk pools, it would be a very expensive change for us to take on and would cost us to increase the assessments on our member cities and counties and special districts. Would ask for no vote.
Thank you. Next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Jason Schmelzer on behalf of the California Coalition on Workers' Compensation and CSAC Excess Insurance Authority, respectfully opposed to the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Jeremy Mers on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce. We are also opposed to the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Theo Payos, the Association of California Insurance Companies, also opposed.
Dane Hutchings with the California Grocers Association in opposition.
Steve Suchel, American Insurance Association. We're also opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Erin Norwood on behalf of the Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of California, also in opposition. Thank you.
Nicole Rice, California Manufacturers and Technology Association, also opposed.
Amber King with the Alpha Fund, also in opposition.
Phil Vermeulen, representing Acclamation Insurance Management Services and Allied Managed Care, also in opposition.
All right. Any other speakers in opposition? If not, that concludes the commentary from members of the public. Ms. Grove has a question.
I have to ask, just because of the way you started the statement.
How much they're worth?
No, that wasn't it. I guess that would be the purchaser because, all right, our husbands are, whatever. Okay. Just out of curiosity, because I do have, over, 400 class codes that I deal with in my business, and we assess a price on class codes. What classification of risk would you assess a breast injury? I'm just asking.
What classification of risk? What we're talking about is, the peace officers have the presumption, right? And that's what we had a witness speak to. So the presumption that the breast cancer was caused in the workforce. That wasn't the concern, right? So it's the same presumption we have for prostate cancer for peace officers, testicular cancer, scrotum cancer. We have a variety of them. The difference is
so you're talking about breast cancer.
We were talking about breast cancer, absolutely. And it's not the presumption in that was determined. This was work-related. What happens once that's determined is a woman's breasts are rated as a 0% worth, basically.
I get it from under the workers' comp system. So my question is not about the presumption and not about that. I was just wondering what classification or what job description would be related to a breast injury that would be workers' comp related or employer at fault related based on a breast injury. Like what occupation are you performing when you have a breast injury that needs to be covered under
That's a different question than permanent disability. This is the payment. It's like losing a thumb or a pinky, right? Permanent disability, you get a rating based on, I guess your question would be the same then for testicles, quite frankly, right? So that's not the question. The question is when you've been permanently disabled at work, how much is that then worth? What is the rating? We're using a rating system that has said breasts are worthless. What this bill would do is put breasts in line with prostate cancer, so that women and men, as much as you can line up, are treated equally.
So I'm not, and again, I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from because
obviously there are professions where women's breasts have a value in their work. That's not the question, but
no, that is the question. That is the question. So maybe
no, but she's asking a different question. You guys are asking when would a woman suffer from a work-related injury to their breast, which is different than when do breasts matter in workplace. There are those, right? I would argue a stripper, which is a legal profession, a waitress, but that's not what this bill covers.
Or anybody who suffered a
professional
I'm sorry,
cheerleader, but that's not what's being done here.
Yeah.
Do you understand? It's a permanent disability. So
I know it's a permanent disability, but permanent disability is based on the fact of limited use of the injury after the injury. So if somebody is a welder or whatever they use, a police officer with a gun injury or, that carries a gun and they lose their thumb, they obviously either have to switch to the opposite hand to use that gun to still fight in the line of duty or something because they are disabled on that particular injury. So I guess my question is that what is the
use of a prostate in a future work-related event then?
What causes a prostate issue on a work-related injury? I mean, if the workers' comp industry is
you're asking two different questions here. Okay. One, there's a presumption. Breast cancer for firefighters and public safety officers, that's a presumption. They're saying that is work-related, the same way prostate cancer is.
Okay.
You probably do not need breast or a prostate to continue to be a firefighter. I'm not sure. Somebody may correct me on that. However, you still get a permanent disability rating that says that was worth something. For prostate, it's about 16%, and for breast, it's 0% unless you still are of childbearing age, in which case it can be up to 5%. Because the breasts are necessary for other things.
But the workers' comp system is designed to replace the pricing of it's designed to replace the pricing of which you would lose a normal function of your job. So if, depending on the job description, like you said, a legal profession as a stripper, obviously that would be a higher expense of job description related activities because having breast as a stripper would be something that would be
We use guidelines, a guideline that's put out by, this is what was decided in 2004, right? A set of guidelines that was determined on a national level of what the worth of these things are going forward with no relation to your individual job and what is necessary for use in that job. That is how prostate, testicular, scrotum losses are so high, anywhere from 18 to 35%. However, those guidelines say breasts are worthless, basically. They're worth 0%. We can debate whether that should have ever been done, but now that we use that guideline and we have that discrepancy, what I'm trying to do is correct the discrepancy. We can go back and argue workers' comp permanent disability ratings and what they should be, but what we're trying to do is just take a public policy issue and change the way that it's dealt with.
And I understand what you're trying to do, but what I'm trying to convey to you, and I don't seem to be doing it right, and I apologize, is that the workers' comp system is in a no-fault system in place to make sure that if somebody is hurt at work, that they are compensated for the difference of what they would have made, at a percentage, a disability rating, if they still continued to work without the injury. It's a compensation system based on
the AMA guide, that is the guides that we use to rate permanent disability, is not at all based on your ability to work. It says it in the book.
It's what it's worth.
They come up with the basis for an impairment rating that have nothing to do with work.
But that's what the workers' comp system is for.
Well, I might actually agree with you, but with SB 899, that was changed when this book was adopted as the permanent disability rating schedule. So as it stands currently, breasts are worth 0.
Under the AMA guidelines.
Yes, which is what's codified in the Labor Code as the guidelines that we use to rate permanent disability.
Is it codified, and was SB 899 established because they didn't see a connection? The federal government under the AMA guidelines doesn't see a connection with the reduction in ability to receive compensation based on a breast injury. I know we keep talking about breast.
I can't honestly say what they were thinking of.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to understand it. Thank you.
There are other members with questions. Mr. Calderon and then Mr. Gatto.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Is this retroactive? So after this bill passes, for those that were denied coverage, can they then apply and receive that coverage, or is this on a going forward basis?
It's a great question, and I'm not sure I can answer that, but that's one that it's not spelled out in the law, but it's going forward from what I'm hearing from.
Actually, there's two sections of the bill, one before and one after.
It's meant to go forward.
Okay.
So I would be happy to work on this bill to ensure that it's from this point forward.
Whenever you can, just get you can give me the answer. Seems pretty straightforward. I know cost was brought up as an issue, as legislators were up here to determine what's worth investing in. I think equality is worth investing in. I support the bill. I moved it earlier. I'll move it again, but I do have to go to appropriations, so I'll be back.
Thank you. Mr. Gatto.
Thank you very much for bringing this bill. I'm going to try to make my questions such that they don't involve body parts. So let's the way that I always learn is with real life examples, and what I'm trying to wrap my head around on is the definition of contemporaneous in Section 4663 C2B, and maybe we could open this up to anybody who wants to answer it, the pro side, the opposition side, even the committee staff, and obviously the author. So in taking osteoporosis, which my understanding is the reduction in bone density that typically occurs with age, and it's usually found in women, not always, but it's a very serious condition. So it says, apportionment in cases of physical injury shall not be based on any of the following conditions if those conditions are contemporaneous with a claimed physical injury. So what I don't understand is, so somebody gets hurt at work, but they have a reduced bone density. When do we define the contemporaneousness? I mean, because osteoporosis is something that is such a slow onset, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. I don't. When will it be considered a pre-existing condition? When will it be considered contemporaneous? I mean, this is a very threshold issue.
And to contain this from going off into eternity, I'm going to ask the author to respond. Any supporters that she'd like to respond to that question?
I'll start with a supporter, and then if need be, we'll because we discussed osteoporosis earlier.
And then I'll leave it up to Mr. Gatto to select who he'd like to answer that question rather than a free-for-all. Right, so then it'll likely go to Mark or Paul. But go ahead, please.
I think that for the vast majority of women, on the date they complete menopause, their bone loss is normally going to decrease from that day forward. Also, the vast majority of women will never have a symptom or an issue because of that bone loss until some sort of traumatic event takes place. So I would define contemporaneous with you have a trauma, and contemporaneously you're diagnosed with osteoporosis that you never knew you had. I think that there are situations, probably more rare, where prior to that traumatic event, there may have been symptoms or disability related to osteoporosis that existed prior to the injury, that was known, that was disabling. And I would define the difference by that.
And I do understand from the analysis and everything else that osteoporosis is the toughest of this bill to get through. The reason it's put in there is because by definition of being born a woman, your bone density is lower. It is a condition that is natural. It is because we are women. The loss of bone strength, of course, bone density is quicker in women as well. So it is one of those rare situations that women and men are just different. And unless there were signs, symptoms, and injuries before the contemporaneous injury at work, it shouldn't be apportioned.
Okay.